Hello, and welcome to the Climate Conscious Podcast, a podcast for people who care about environmental sustainability and climate action. I'm your host, Dulal. Today's special guest is an independent researcher with active research interests in natural resource management, remote sensing, and GIS, urban dynamics, and environmental issues. He completed his PhD on Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme and watershed development programs in India from renowned J. Nehru University in New Delhi. He has also done active research on loss of cropland in the periphery of Indian metropolitan cities during his MPhil. At present, he is actively involved in research on management of municipal solid waste and smart cities. He has over 8 years of experience of working in the government of India. However, the views expressed here would be his personal views. I am delighted to welcome to the Climate Conscious Podcast, Dr. Nanda Dulal Das.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to participate in this. Dulal, you have been such a wonderful host. I have been listening to many of your podcast series, and they are excellent. So it's an honor to join your podcast here.
Thank you, and it's an honor to chat with you today. It's nighttime where I am, and I know it's good morning where you are.
yes. Yeah, I was excited to get up early and join this podcast.
Previously, development was measured in purely economic terms. It was measured by the level of a country's GDP, gross domestic product. This indicator was based on the monetary value of goods and services made within a country during a specific period. It did not account for the social and ecological systems. The global community has since evolved, and we now have an agreement with all the United Nations member states on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we now use the SDG as an index to measure development.
Yes.
So before we get into the SDGs, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, Nanda, tell me, how would you define sustainable development?
Yes, sustainable development, this is a concept that has evolved from the past, maybe from 200 years, 500 years. This concept was ingrained in their behavior, in their daily lives, where they used to save resources. They won't allow others to invade into their areas. They won't allow their resources to degrade so that they can live for longer. They can ensure a better life for their future generation. So when it was defined, Sustainable Development Goal was defined in 1980s, then they said it's a goal it's a development which will not jeopardize the future of the forthcoming generations, but at the same time, this will also ensure that the present generation is having a fair share of the resources. So that means we will use resources, conserve it, so that the future generation is not deprived of their share of resources. So to put it very simply, that there is a technical terminology which defines sustainable development, but this is how the understanding has evolved. There is something called our footprint, our carbon footprint or our normal footprint. It should match with the rate of reproduction of resources. If we generate resources 10, we should use 10 ideally. But that rarely happens, so we keep on degrading the resources. And that's why this discussion on sustainable development is key to initiate action in this direction so that we can reduce use of resources and maximize resources through using technologies. So that the resource spectrum, Like we have more resources because of use of technology.
I came across a definition of sustainability as being achieved when resource extraction from the
Yes,
ecological systems occurs within the carrying capacity of the resource base, and when
yes,
waste transfer to the ecological system does not exceed the assimilative capacity of the particular ecosystem.
yes, yes. Actually, nature it has a mechanism to revive itself. If you put some pressure on it, it will assimilate that pressure, and it will regain its strength the next day. So it's called the nature's homeostasis mechanism, like where it will adjust to the pressure that has been put to it. It works with all the systems in the world. So that limit to which it can bear that pressure is the limit where we should set the goals for sustainable development.
So, Nanda, you have conducted research focused on certain elements of sustainable development, in particular, Goals 2, Zero Hunger,
Yes,
and Goal
zero
11,
hunger. Yes,
Sustainable Cities and Communities. So, can you tell
yes,
us a bit about your research in these areas?
yes. Wherever this zero hunger, these themes were also involved. These themes were also projected in the last Millennium Development Goals in a subtle manner, in a different manner. So my research, like I started doing work on it from 2008-9, when I was like in a village survey where we started with water, then we entered into this area of food security. Food security, if you say zero hunger, there are several things, like we have to ensure food to every people. That is first. But then there will be certain areas, what food, the quality of food has to be good. Then if we are providing food, whether this has to be free or there will be some price for it. If there is some price for it, then whether it should be that means whether it is affordable to every people or not. So there is an quality issue, there is a accessibility issue, and there is affordability issue. So whether we can ensure food at a price which can be paid by a customer, which can be paid by a citizen, which is easily available in the area, and which is of good quality. So India has also progressed, while many of the world countries have also progressed. But if you see this current COVID situation, where the countries have almost closed their boundaries, the interactions have become less. There is a risk. What I find, there is a risk for these targets to be achieved like in a proper manner, because the countries are now focusing more into their internal supply and demand management of food, internal resources. Because countries previously, what was happening, there is World Food Program, there is World Food Organization, which helps, and it has helped also during the COVID time. But what has happened now, the countries, they are restricting their resources to themselves because of COVID, because of internal economic problems. So the major focus of the countries have become that they should provide food to their people itself. If we want to achieve zero hunger, it's not that we achieve it internally, but we have to help each other so that everybody goes everybody goes with food at the end of the day, with quality food, with accessible food, and if there is a price, it is very minimum. So there is equity.
Yes, COVID has been a big disruptor across the
Yes,
board, and in
yes,
particular, it can be a setback to the attainment of the SDGs.
yes, it is.
And goal 2 is also an issue for my country, Trinidad and Tobago, because we have a very high import bill. We import a lot of our food, and this
Yes,
vulnerability was highlighted during COVID with the restrictions. It highlighted the need for us to pay attention to
yes,
food accessibility, being able to access the food that we need.
Yes, because when the countries, because we work on there is in economics there are some theories which speaks of comparative advantage. So one country will make one thing, another country will make another thing where they have better advantage, and then they will exchange these products. But what COVID has done, you exchange has become less. So many countries are not getting enough resources which they used to have through their trade, normal trade. Initially, they could like there is a restriction. There is a many countries now cannot pay also for their imports, so they are not importing, and many countries are not exporting also because they want to protect their own citizens. So that has become a big issue in this scenario.
So how do we overcome this challenge, Nanda?
Yeah, well, if we see like for millennium before the Sustainable Development Goals came, SDGs came, there was MDG, Millennium Development Goals. Yeah, they are the G7, G8 countries. They decided that they will allow IMF or the African Development Bank, these banks, these big financial institutions, to waive up loans of smaller countries because smaller countries have been hard hit by this crisis. So waiving their loans will reduce the interest payment burden on them, and that will give the countries additional resources, and with the additional resources they can actually procure more food. So I think global community has to come together and extend their this kind of facility because this is important. Now
Mm-hmm.
these are very small steps that global community can take, because if there is a combined decision taken to waive up the interest for the smaller countries, which with the loan on the loan that they have taken from IMF, say from African Development Bank or Asian Development Bank or other big financial institutions, if we can waive up those loans or interest payment for some time, then they will get additional resources to spend on their people. And maybe that loan waiver can happen in the form of food exchange also. Like there is carbon credit, there can be something of food credit also, that this much of loan will be waived and this much of food will be supplied. Like if you buy this, if you can, it can be just given, it can be exchanged between countries.
Yes, I think we need some innovative
Yes,
ways to
yes,
overcome the
yes,
challenges that we face.
absolutely.
If we look at the country profiles or the rankings for sustainable development goals, the ranking is topped or dominated by the industrialized or developed countries. At the top of
Yes,
developing nations, they have their own challenges. We need innovative solutions to our unique challenges because we can't be expected to achieve the same goals in the same way that industrialized nations have been able to.
yes,
So I definitely agree with, the idea of a global response and considering things like relieving the debt burden, which is faced by many
yes.
Caribbean countries.
Yes, there can be another solution like which like at present India has also utilized on that. Like you can use your manpower because after COVID, there many people have become jobless, so they are in search of employment. Now, in rural areas, if we can give employment to people, it's a guaranteed employment where you will give some daily wages to them and employ them in the croplands in the fields to produce more, then you can have higher food production, which will reduce the hunger in turn. Like many
Yes.
countries, even when their industrial output has decreased, many agriculture, like in agricultural indicators, they are still growing. So that has happened because many people who were otherwise employed in other jobs, now they have been diverted to agriculture. So that's a positive point also during this crisis.
Nanda, here in Trinidad and Tobago, we actually have a challenge in terms of attracting manpower into the agricultural field.
Yes, but now this challenge has become opportunities to some extent because they don't have a better opportunity. So if they now come there and earn a daily wage, they can actually produce more agricultural output. So for the coming years, it will be better like that. There will be probably no hunger. And if we move on to the next our next goal, that is sustainable cities and communities, we can see that these two are interlinked. We can have a sustainable city, we can sustain a city if there is enough agricultural production, if there is enough food coming to the city, if there is enough supplies, livestock, say all the resources that a city needs, it has to come from the rural areas, from the background, from the hinterland of the urban area. And then as a city, it has to sustain, because what is the problem there? That the cities are polluting these days. So the pollution becomes so much that the cities crumble by themselves. Like you have obnoxious air, you cannot breathe properly. You have degraded water, you have water is so polluted, so you cannot use water properly. Now for sustainable cities, you need better management of these resources, and for that many a times it is said that you reduce your population pressure on the cities. For that you need to develop your rural areas also, and also the periphery of the cities, so that the pressure on the city gets reduced.
So basically, a strategy for creating or improving the sustainability of your cities includes development of your rural areas.
Absolutely.
And that brings us back to the point of it all being a system and everything being interconnected, one feeding into the other.
Absolutely. The cities in itself, for the cities to become sustainable also, they have to become environment friendly. Like the cities cannot run on a concrete structure which cannot provide for, say, better environmental solutions. So we have green buildings, we have green energy codes, we have power saving lights coming up, which will reduce the power consumption by the city, which will have lesser impact on the environment. So city as such is not a burden, it doesn't become a burden on the environment, so that it remains sustainable in the long run. Otherwise a city, we have seen how the industrial revolution, when it started, the cities before that they were very, very healthy. After industrial revolution, we have seen cities which have become dark, which have become unsustainable, and people started moving out from the cities. But nowadays we can see in there are many cities in Japan, many cities in Europe, many cities in United States, which can sustain themselves because they are using less resources. As such, per capita consumption of resources has become lesser.
Many of our issues stem from our rate of consumption, which is not aligned with the limits to growth.
Yes.
So the whole sustainability movement is about coming back into alignment with, as we mentioned before, carrying capacity and the ability of natural ecosystems to assimilate the waste that we generate.
Absolutely. And while we do that, we have, because we have aspirations also. We cannot live like earlier, like the primitive society where we used to live in forests. We have aspirations to get the better resources, better technologies. Our aspiration has to match, and our technologies have to match the production capacity and the recovery capacity. Now technologies are there for recovering also. Like we filter everything from a power plant which is emitting so much of gases, or urban area which is emitting so much of heat. Now there are mechanisms, technological solutions to which we can actually absorb those heats, can actually filter out the pollutants. So these two, like our aspirations and our technological interventions, they have to match, so that finally we can have a balanced growth.
Yes, and you make an important point about the role of technology in helping us to achieve sustainable development. And these solutions will play a critical role, particularly in achieving smart and sustainable cities. with the use of
Yes.
ICT to improve
Yes.
efficiency.
Yes. Because within sustainable city also their technology is directed to achieving, say, city core city infrastructure, how it can be done, it can be better, make better. Then there are sanitation, city sewerage treatment. So if you see, like, our cities, they produce enough waste every day. Like, in a per capita waste production, it varies between different countries. A person in a day generates around 1 kg of waste. Now, this 1 kg of waste into, if a city has 10 million population, like many of our cities have, so 10 million populations and into 1 kg, that means 10 million kilograms of waste is produced every day. So now we need a proper treatment for this. If we see for water that 10 million people will use in a city, so what they're if they use like 10 liters, even that is very less, 10 liter of water daily, they'll use 100 million liters of water daily, and that will be wastewater. So we need, there are technologies which are actually transforming these wastewater, these waste, into resources, and putting the rest of it into environment. So there we need to balance it out, that we do not pollute the environment in such a way that this 10 million population becomes unsustainable in coming years.
You know, I'm always amazed by the sheer size of the population of India. You'll have 1.3 billion persons in
Yes.
comparison to Trinidad and Tobago's 1.3 million.
Oh, that's a good comparison. But like, yeah, it's like, if you see in a global ecosystem, we are all part of that ecosystem. So yeah, Trinidad and Tobago can be like, we also have many states which have uh, population like that. United States may be having some states which will be having similar population. So we are like,
Yeah.
if we see it as an integrated system, these are like parts of the ecosystem.
Yes,
Like,
definitely.
yeah, India may be like 100 such parts combined together. So there will be there will be lot of like interactions and frictions, and everything will be like, it's very embedded.
Yeah, and you know, although there's a big difference between the size of our populations, you know, we do share some similarities in terms of
Yes, yes,
the
yes,
challenges that we face in
yes,
achieving the
yes,
sustainable development goals. So if
yes,
we look at the both country profiles in terms of individual performance, you know, both your country and mine have achieved one out of the 17 goals completely. In the
absolutely.
case of Trinidad and Tobago, it's no poverty. And in the case of
Yes,
India, it's climate action. And for all
yes,
the other goals, they are in varying stages of progress with varying levels of challenges. So, other than COVID-19, which we acknowledge as a big challenge, what are some of the other challenges to achieving the SDGs?
yes. The other challenges, if we see, like, they are protectionism, where a country tries to protect yourself. Not necessarily, it does not necessarily mean that when we envisage that we can protect, we can actually grow. That doesn't mean they do not go together many times. So many countries have become protective. Even before COVID, if you see, many countries have become protective of their own self, and they have reduced. If you see from climate action package, from climate action treaties, some countries have pulled out. Some countries are not serious about their own commitments. So these are threats. Like, in a multilateral world, if we do not communicate, if we do not exchange, we cannot achieve a combined goal which has been set for everybody. So I find these two, like, lack of commitments, increasing protectionism, as threats to achieving these goals.
Yes. Another challenge that I have observed related to Trinidad and Tobago is a lack of data. So
Yes.
each of the 17 goals, they have a number of targets and indicators. And for several of them, there is no data. So you don't have an accurate picture of the reality. Is that also
Yes.
an issue in India?
Yes, that is an issue because there have been several organizations which are collecting data. There was something called Planning Commission, which used to make a 5-year plan and then take the country forward as per those plans. Now, replacing that kind of planning commission, there is something called IO. It's a institution which makes visions, which has a vision, which makes plans and works on data. Data is collected by different other organizations. So they have calculated one indicator like this 17 goals, and there are multiple indicators, around over 100 indicators. They have collected, tried to collect data on all these indicators and came out with a single indicator, like which is a composite indicator of the over 100 indicators. So data, yeah, they are like you have 100, say 115, 17 indicators. You have data for 60, direct data for 60. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
say maternal mortality or infant mortality, you collect them from hospitals. Now there are many infant deaths, many maternal deaths happening in households also,
Right.
which go unreported. So even if you have data, the data is not pure because you are collecting the data only from the institutions. So
Right.
that's an issue. That's an issue. Like we have to like try to improve that. So for that, like if we want to count everybody, we need to we have to ensure that our institutions penetrate to the bottom level, that there is no death happening outside a hospital or outside a medical facility. Then our
Agreed.
data will be pure. Yes.
Yes.
So I think that can be that is a matter of time. It will slowly evolve, and if we try to fix them very quickly, then there is a tendency that wrong data will be fed. So that can be even more dangerous.
Yes, we definitely need to pay attention to our institutions and the collection of accurate data, which
Yes,
would give us an idea of where we are, but also it can be used to guide policy development.
yes, I totally agree with you, Deval. Like this is a very important point that you had raised. The data problem. Actually, it's a problem when we set a goal and we do not have actual data. How do we say that we have achieved the goal? And that's a problem. So we have to constantly improve on this front. Yes.
Yes, and when we talk about goals, we tend to say that goals should be SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound.
Absolutely. But there are some indicators like global, if you say there are indicators like global interaction or multilateralism, partnership, responsible consumption, peace, justice. These are also some of the goals in the SDG, which are little subjective, I find.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, yeah. So like if you want to figure them, you have to device indicator. Like if you want to say what is partnership, so partnership will be uh, number of treaties signed by different countries is an indicator. Say number of treaties signed between United States and say Trinidad and Tobago or Brazil is an indicator of partnership. But that is very difficult to measure. What treaty? It can be a defense treaty also. That does not necessarily mean we are achieving sustainable goals.
Yes, and then you may sign a treaty but not really enact it or enforce it.
Implement, yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's the problem. That's lack of commitment part, yeah, where you actually do not act what you should, like one says.
Mm-hmm.
So there are these issues, and this will maybe like with time only we will have a better picture and situation evolving.
There are, persons who believe that the SDGs are not attainable. But
No. I'm not among those who think that it is attainable. If we do not have a goal, then if we do not have a purpose, then we are nowhere actually. And we have to keep the purpose in front, and we have to try to achieve more than what we have actually, what we have set for ourselves. Then we can go somewhere. If we do not have goals, we cannot go anywhere. So we need them, and they are very, very thought out, very thoughtfully derived goals. Like many brains have been put together, they have worked tirelessly, and they have devised this, and it has worked also. If we see before these sustainable development goals, there are MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, between 2000 and 2015. So there also we saw how many countries had progressed, like Brazil, India, China, Japan, many countries they had shown remarkable progress. Now, if we do not have that indicator, we do not know from where the country started and where it went. So the goals are important, and many of the goals have been achieved also. So I believe sustainable development goals are also achievable, quite achievable.
I agree with you. I agree that it's very important for us to have goals. As imperfect as they may be, we have something to work
Yes,
towards and aspire to.
yes, definitely.
So we're in 2020, and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, they span 2015 to 2030.
Yes. So 10 more years, I think that's a good time. That's a good time if the countries, they show their commitments and they cooperate to achieve these goals.
We definitely need meaningful action, as with everything
Yes,
else. We
definitely.
need more than just talking about it. We need to see action. But like you, I
Absolutely.
am very optimistic that the global community could rise to the occasion. I'm optimistic that my home country can do it also, and I'm very optimistic based on what I have heard about and even seen for myself that India as well can improve its sustainability.
Yes, I think many countries are on track to achieve these goals. There are certain disruptions like this, like COVID or say data problem or some internal political issues or economic constraints. But countries are progressing. Many countries are progressing in that direction. Yeah, my take on this issue will be like together we can. Together we can achieve a better world. But if we work in parts, the parts are not as big as the sum of the parts. Like if we have the total is much higher than the parts themselves. So my only thing is that we have to be together to achieve these goals. Yeah, it was nice like talking to you and interacting with you on several inquisitive questions, inquisitive thoughts that you have shared, and several dimensions that you have discussed about. They're fantastic, I think, and I loved
Thank
it
you.
totally. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll place the link in the show notes if anyone would like to connect with Dr. Nanda Dulal.
Yes, yes, that will be a pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining me on the Climate Conscious podcast and for a very insightful chat.
Thank you, Deval. Thank you, and I wish this Concast project it goes for long, like really long, and during this project we can see some of these SDGs are being achieved. So that would be a
Yes,
great thing.
yes, we can probably do an update later on.
Yes, yes, yes.
Namaste.
Namaste, namaste, and thank you so much.
Yes,